In my review of Body Harvest, I explored the way in which the steps taken along a path have lasting effects that influence what comes afterwards. It got me thinking about my videos and the steps that led me to where I am today. I make videos because I enjoy making them, but where did that joy come from? At what point did I discover that I derive great satisfaction from weaving together elements in a timeline, fiddling and tweaking until everything feels just right? This video is going to be a bit different from the others because it's going to be quite introspective, and also because its subject, Microsoft 3D Movie Maker, isn't really a game. It is, however, important to me because it was the spark that kindled my love of making videos. Without this quirky little edutainment program, it's quite likely that Jam Enslaver reviews wouldn't even exist. As a quick sidebar, note that 3D Movie Maker should not be confused with Windows Movie Maker, which was the movie editing software that came with Windows XP, and continues to be supported by Microsoft. It's worth mentioning not only because of the similar name, but also because it is itself another important point in the story of how my video editing hobby evolved. It was the first actual video editing suite I ever used, and was the driver behind those ridiculous music videos my friends and I made at university. But no, today I'm talking about 3D Movie Maker, which was released under the Microsoft Kids sub-brand in 1995 and even 20 plus years later is kind of amazing.
Here are all the tools you need to create a really cool movie!
For a piece of software directed at children, it is surprisingly robust, putting all the tools you need to make an animated movie into a single, extremely easy to understand package. Making an actor walk across the screen is as simple as clicking and dragging, which commits those animation frames into the timeline which you can then rewind and add more actions to. You can add titles, sound effects, select costumes, you can even record your own dialogue from within the game or import files you recorded elsewhere.
Hello, police?
The learning curve is perfectly balanced. Every button has a fully voiced tooltip that explains how it works in detail, and once you have a handle on the basics, there are more advanced options and tweaks that can be put to use, like syncing sounds with actions, or choosing which keyframe an animation starts at. There are limitations though. Whilst you can scrub back and forth through the movie's timeline, editing is completely linear. For someone used to non-linear editing, this feels very restrictive. To illustrate the point, imagine you want a character to speak, but don't have the audio for their voice recorded yet. You can leave a gap and come back to it later, but if the gap isn't the right size, there's no way of adjusting it without having to change everything that happens further down the timeline. The backgrounds aren't really 3D, but are pre-rendered Resident Evil style, meaning that you have to make do with a limited number of camera angles built into each scene. As you can imagine, the movies you create are limited by the assets that come with the game. If you want to make a police drama set in a city, or a horror movie that takes place in a haunted house, then you're in luck. But if you want to make a western, there isn't much you can do. One could argue that this is actually a good thing, because it encourages you to make the most of what you have, a very useful lesson to burgeoning filmmakers, and one that I'm still using to this day. The microphone I'm recording this voiceover on right now has a piece of paper towel taped over it to act as a makeshift pop screen. I remember creating numerous Star Trek parodies which used the aeroplane interior as a stand-in for a spaceship, using a large black cube to block the view of the sky outside the windows. In fact, because of the surprising depth of the tools, there isn't much you can't do with a little bit of imagination. Say you want a character to use a mobile phone, something that was only just becoming a thing people did in 1995, there's no action for that and no built-in prop. But you can just use the waving action, stop their hand at the right point using the keyframe editor, put a black cuboid in their hand, and there you go. If you get bored with making movies or run out of inspiration, you're free to explore the cinema that is the game's setting, which is chock full of funny little animations to discover, usually featuring the game's guide McZ, who, I discovered in the course of making this video, is the same person who plays the G-Man in the Half-Life games.
What would you like to do now?
Wake up, Mr. Freeman. Wake up and smell the ashes.
The Ideas Room features the Splot Machine, which randomly spits out a scene containing one character, one prop, and some background music to use as the starting point for your story. There's also a treasure hunt aspect to the game, as you're put in charge of reassembling the lost pages of the talent book, which describes all the actors in the game, along with some neat ideas for how to use them in your movies. If you need a more guided experience, you can always go talk to Melanie in the projects room, who will guide you paint-by-numbers style through the process of finishing the handful of half-complete movies that come with the game. Whenever you've completed your work, you can head over to the theatre itself and watch it on the big screen. Going back to 3D Movie Maker after all these years makes me wonder what a new one will be like. Imagine how cool it would be if it had full 3D camera control, the ability to download new packs of assets, and the option to publish directly to video sharing sites like YouTube. Imagine how great it would be for kids to have something like this which encouraged them to get creative and share their art with the world. Making videos is a personal passion, and what got me here were the stepping stones of easily accessible software that gradually taught me the tools of video editing, taking me from 3D Movie Maker to Windows Movie Maker to Sony Vegas and Movie Studio to who knows where. Real movie editors can be daunting, not just because they have a large number of tools and options, but also because you can't start with a completely blank slate. You need to have some movie clips to work with before you can start editing. Whilst it's awesome that it's never been easier to get started making movies, perhaps that first initial step could be made a bit easier by offering a completely self-contained environment in which to experiment and explore. I've come a long way since the days where I would spend hours in the computer lab at school making up silly stories to amuse my friends, and I know that the more I make these videos, the more I'll continue to grow. I wish I still had some of those old movies to look at now, but at least I can look back fondly at the software that started it all, and indulge my inner Spielberg a little in the process. I'm tremendously grateful that I get to share my passion with all of you. Thank you so much for watching. I look forward to continuing the journey and seeing where it takes me next.